Okay, so we're almost finalizing our tank now. Um, Obviously, a tank isn't a tank without some track. So um, tracks are available in most kits with these vinyl tracks. A lot of guys call them the rubber band tracks, and they're fine to use. A lot of guys still use them. And then there's plastic track. Tamiya has a nice set for the G. Um, which are the ones I'm going to put on the tank that we've been working with. And then there's Frual tracks, which are excellent product as well. All I suggest is when you're doing some 40-ton tanks, Tigers, King Tigers, heavy tanks, just to support your rear axle a little bit, maybe with a brass shim or something, just because of the weight of the tracks. With Frual tracks, they can pull down that axle. I've even seen them broken off. So just support your axles if you're going to use Frual tracks on heavy tanks. You don't have to worry with Panzer 3s, Panzer 4s. Frual tracks aren't that heavy, but with the heavier stuff, you might want to just support your axles a little bit, especially on the rear. Um, so I'm going to use Tamiya Panther G tracks. It's kit number 35171, and it's actually been hard to find of late. You may have to go beyond your local hobby shop to find them. But anyway, they're excellent. The thing I love about them is I can paint these right on the sprue because the pins or the knockout pins and markings, they're so hidden amongst all this. And once I weather them, you're never going to see those little knockout pins. They're not. They're not on the flat side of the track. That's the advantage of using these ones and painting them right on the sprues. Now, if the knockout pins, of course, sit down on these little flat spots on the track, of course, you're going to have to sand and take a chisel blade and remove all those. And that's a lot of work. There's a heck of a lot of track on a Panther. There's probably 180 pieces of track, so it's a lot of work. Now, the other advantage to the Tamiya Panther G, which isn't customary, but I can paint these wheels right on the sprues, which is a fantastic way to do it. It makes it easy to paint, and it makes it easy to weather right on the sprues. Reason being is that Tamiya has eliminated a seam. And quite often, like most manufacturers, there's a seam down the center of German wheels and a lot of wheels. But fortunately for us, other than this little pouring spot, there's going to be no cleanup on these tracks. Obviously, you're going to have to remove the burr from the sprue. But other than that, these tracks or these wheels rather, are perfect for painting on the sprue. Now, it's probably a little unorthodox to paint them on the sprue, but we're lucky with a Tamiya Panther G that we're able to do that. And you can see that this particular wheel has been totally painted. I'm just going to clip that off in the near future, sand off that little thing, touch up with a little black paint where the sprue was, and she's ready to go. Now, due to the habits of plastic modelers, we start projects and then we get emotionally attached to something else that's just arrived at your local hobby shop, and we dive into that too. And then this one sort of takes a little back burner. That's why there's a great advantage to leaving this on the sprue as long as you can. They're not going to scatter. They're not going to be lost in the the typical modeling room box that never seems to be found again. So I know these habits because I have those habits. So that's why I love this. One of the reasons why I love the G is everything can be kept together. So, I mean, I've already moved on to a Tamiya Lang, the L70, the newer kit from I think 2015, in the process of building my Panther. So, you know what? We're always got 2 or 3 projects on the go. So keeping things tight in their boxes and what have you is important. So, so I'm gonna paint this rubber band track, and then I'm also gonna paint these, and a new product on the market in the last 18 months or so here in North America have been these Vallejo metallizing colors. And even though it says for airbrush, guys have taken to hand brushing them, and they're excellent metallic paints. And those are those I've used steel and burnt iron. Those are the two colors that I'm going to use to paint the tracks, as well as a little bit of Tamiya just to get inside all the little crevices. And then when I come to doing the cleats and the raised parts on the track, I'll use these colors. The Vallejo steel is just excellent color. Those of you who are doing figurines and hand painting figurines, using the steel for different things when painting knights and painting swords and that sort of stuff, don't hesitate to go to these paints for that kind of thing. They're excellent hand brushing paints. So anyway, let's pick up the pace and get these tracks on the go. Okay, so here I am, and I've mixed our popular colors together again. Our iron color, which is NATO black with hull red, and I'm just giving these just a thin little spray of iron. And I've also sprayed our vinyl track, and it's got a nice coating on it. Just letting that dry, and then we go around to the front parts of these tracks. And you can do this sort of sloppy, it doesn't matter. What you're going to do these tracks in the end is cover them with MIG pigments or Vallejo pigments and what have you. So a loosey-goosey spray of iron is just a foundation color for what's to come. So I spray them right on the sprue, and like I said earlier, so fortunately with the Tamiya ones, there's none of those knockout circles anywhere, so you can weather them and what have you right on the sprues. It's a heck of a lot easier to do. Now some guys just start gluing them onto the wheels of the tank and then paint them thereafter, and that's quite okay too. I've just gotten used to doing it this way, and I continue to do it. So it's just what you're familiar with and what you've been doing. If you're happy with doing that, keep going. So then these are going to dry very quickly, and then we can okay, so for painting the steel or metal, I like to use a chisel brush or a filbert brush. You can find these at your art store or your local hobby shop, and they just get the job done a little quicker, and they're pretty fine brushes. And then all you're going to do is just basically that old Francois Verlinden tip about highlighting. You're just going to catch all the highlights on these tracks. So I'll just, and this is what we're using here is Vallejo steel, and it's just a fantastic color for painting, for getting a start. So I just take that old highlighting technique that we learned so many years ago and just apply it to the tops of these tracks. Now, if you're going to blacken frual tracks and what have you, weather them, you won't have to do this. With a piece of sandpaper, you go through frill tracks and do the same process. Because they're made out of metal, obviously this metal is going to be exposed on those tracks. All you have to do is just sand the cleated parts with 600 sandpaper on the frill tracks, and she's done naturally. So that's a good start. And you can flip it over. And we'll just do the same again. Catch the teeth. And don't forget where the wheels touch the tracks. Because the wheels are going to, even though they're made out of rubber, they're going to wear down the pads on these tracks. So make sure that you include that too. And don't forget, we're also going to cover these with MIG powders and what have you. So don't panic if it looks a little sloppy in the beginning. It'll all look correct in the end. So as you can see, there you are. Now if you're going to switch to the plastic, or you're going to use the plastic instead, again, the old Verlinden Shep Payne highlighting techniques come in very handy now. Of course, it takes just a bit longer with individual track links, of course, but it's hobby time. It's fun time. And there you are. You can see how beautiful that paint responds. Definitely not, it'll say right on there, airbrush colors. Don't worry about it. Just carry on and hand brush them. And then just flip them over and do the other side too. Don't forget the part where the wheels touch the tracks. And definitely weather in the direction that the tank is moving. So in other words, the tracks are going to be weathered in the direction that the wheels are hitting the tracks. Don't go left and right like I did earlier. Keep trying to go in the same forward and backward motion. And you're weathering right over top of that iron color. The iron color is fading away, but you need some sort of backdrop for your weathering. You definitely have to go through the process of painting them iron first, even though maybe 50% of the iron color is faded away. But you can see the iron color inside all the recesses. But then what you can do is start with Vallejo pigments, and then you're going to use a different technique, possibly with a brush like this, where you're just going to stipple the pigments in there. Now, some of the guys at this point, even though they're using a plastic track, will actually assemble them on the tank. And probably that's the way I'm going to go too. I'm going to assemble them on the tank and then apply the different pigments and colors. Also too, in that same process, I'll splash up some of the pigment colors on the backs of the tank, and obviously a uniform weathering color such as a Vallejo 104 is one of my favorite pigments, and I'll take that right through all the weathering of the tank now, the pigment part of the portion of the weathering. So there's a good example of painting tracks, and as you guys can see, it took me all of about 10 minutes. So once again, it's hobby time, it's your time. Now let's talk about the wheels for a moment. The wheels are an important part of this whole operation, and you can't heavily weather your tank in mud or stuck in a Stalingrad type of setting, thawing mud and snow, and then don't paint your wheels to match. You can't have nice clean wheels and muck all over your tank, so you got to stay in the terrain So, and take each one of these wheels and turn them into little projects. So there's one here with a red hub on it. I'm not sure if the Germans had a, those types of things. I know that the Canadian Army does on their Leopards now and again. Replacement things with the primer, caps for greasing and oiling. But in any event, turn these wheels into a project. Now it takes you like an evening to paint wheels. It's not something to be rushed. And, if it takes 2 hours to paint the wheels, so be it. But do a great job on the wheels, because they're going to be in contact with the ground. You're going to have your ground cover, and you're going to do these beautiful street scenes, or cobblestone scenes, or grasses and what have you. And so focus is going to be on those wheels. So make sure that you do a great job on the wheels as well as the track. And like I say, it's not going to take you a lot of time, but the result is going to be beneficial for sure. So don't speed through this portion of your model. We're not at a raceway here. It's hobby time. Okay, so that concludes the episode today. We've covered the vinyl tracks, we've covered plastic tracks, and I've mentioned the Friul tracks, which also too, Friul tracks have been in North America sometimes hard to find. So if you're in a jam, there's the Barrel Store and different places where you can pick up Friul tracks, Hornet Hobbies. So if you can find them, fantastic. If not, don't hesitate to use plastic tracks. And the vinyl tracks, I know they're not as popular anymore, but anyway, a simple way of painting them. And then proceed with the wheels. We've done all the wheels. Treat them like teeny little projects, even though there's 30 wheels here. Don't worry about it. Weather them properly. Take them individually. And if there's any questions, contact us. And that'll conclude today's episodes. Thank you so much for watching.